Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Balava Girivaranari Gopi Jana Balava Girivaranari Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balava Girivaranari Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta ki jai. So today is the appearance day of celebration of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So rather than reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll read about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Let's see. So there's so much to read about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So I just chose something from the beginning of this volume. This is a 3-volume set. This is volume 2. So his preaching was extraordinary. So we'll be reading chapter 2 here. It's called Preaching to the Intelligentsia. And then if we can finish that, then we'll read chapter 3, Preaching to the World. Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said, Dinere adhika daya kare bhagavan kulina pandita dantira vada abhiman. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is particularly merciful to the humble and downtrodden. Both aristocrats, learned scholars, and the wealthy tend to be greatly proud. That's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya's original inner followers were, from external vision, mostly upper caste. And Nityananda Prabhu, apart from his celebrated upliftment of the most fallen, was also active among the Suvarna Vanik, gold merchant community. But because most Vaishnavas in Bengal and Orissa were from the lower classes, Vaishnav Dharma had come to be considered a beggar's religion, the resort of the Chota Loga, a disparaging term for the poor, low class, or the vulgar. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others of his generation had revived bhakti among the Bhadra Loka, who prided themselves on their learning, culture, and sophistication. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati continued that lead by concentrating his propaganda effort on the rich, learned, and masterful, thus abundantly bestowing Lord Chaitanya's mercy on them. The majority of traditional Vaishnavas were uneducated, unphilosophical, and nauseatingly sentimental, and thus inappropriate recipients for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's highly erudite delivery. Moreover, being swamped by sahaja influence, they were very difficult to rectify. But the intellectuals and persons of particular disposition were naturally attracted to him, and he reciprocated by delivering Hari Katha to them in a highly erudite manner, in martas furnished according to their taste, and by treating them concordantly to the behavioral standards they had imbibed. Visitors to any Gaudiya Math who were dressed in English attire of coat, shirt, and pants that bespoke their social stature would be offered a chair and fanned by young brahmachari. Traditional practice in temples is to sit cross-legged on the floor, and common pious Hindus could not imagine sitting on the same level rather than at the feet of the sadhu, or being served by even an adolescent sadhu. Yet, taking into account the different outlook and sense of dignity of respectable men, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati made this adjustment so the visitors could hear and be benefited, rather than attempting to foist unnecessary strictures upon them. Time, place, and circumstance. He once revealed, "I want only a good audience of cultured persons. I am very eager to distribute to the public my feelings about Krishna Bhakti. That is my only hankering. I want nothing else in this world, no gorgeous arrangement for personal comfort. And on another occasion, quote, just as Lord Chaitanya met proponents of various paths and established Bhagavad Dharma by answering their innumerable questions, in current times, so many opponents of his teachings bring forth all kinds of new challenges. Hence, I am obliged to give solutions in a manner faithful to that employed by Mahaprabhu. He would express the aspiration, quote, when high court judges wear Gaudiya tilak in the courtroom, then our preaching can be considered somewhat developed. Imagine if the judges actually wear tilak in the courtroom. By convincing the educated, but convincing the educated was not easy. Persons enamored of their own intelligence were the least likely to submit to the message of Godhead, and it was not uncommon for such pompous intellectuals to openly confront Srila Saraswati Thakur, who was always ready to reply point by point, anatomizing the erroneous claims of adversaries. To those with faith in Shastra, he supplied profuse Shastriya evidence to endorse his position. And to those who swore by logic and reason, he offered overwhelmingly arguments predicted on logic and reason, which led to the same conclusion. Among the modernized intellectuals he encountered, the most honest were much thankful that in presenting Hari Katha, Srila Saraswati Thakur was not limited to traditional Shastriya themes, but was prepared to and extraordinarily capable of addressing all aspects of life and every societal issue. So he could, whatever one's inclination was, he was able to respond just in the perfect way for those who wanted, those who were very learned and had a lot of faith in Shastra. He would use Shastra to explain and support whatever statements that he was making. And for those who didn't really think much about Shastra, but they liked logic and argument like that, he would use logic and argument to support whatever he was saying. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not hesitate to correct respectable scholars, even for inaptly praising him. When complimented by Fr. Johns, S.J., the principal professor of philosophy at St. Xavier's College in Calcutta, for propounding, quote, an exceedingly high philosophy, end quote, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati pointed out that those truths were neither part of nor compatible to the philosophies of the world, for they were adhokshaja, surpassing the gamut of mundane experimental knowledge. Later in the conversation, when Fr. Jonas expressed appreciation of his ideas, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati clarified that he was speaking not of ideas, but of reality. During that era, empiricism, or more specifically, logical positivism, was the prevailing worldview among Western intellectuals and their overseas lackeys. by the influence of scientific pragmatism and empiricism and rationalism that in the West had long been pitted against each other, had become imperceptibly uh, syncretized into a largely atheistic amalgam. Amalgam. Its adherents bumptiously convinced that knowledge is attainable solely through cognitive faculties, and that to even consider anything beyond is more poppycock fit only for ignoramuses. This is the way this book was put together by Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, but the language is the way that Bhaktisiddhanta would actually write and speak. He was very, English was not his first language, but he was very expert in writing in English and speaking in English. An unprecedented counteraction, wholly against the grain of contemporary trends in thought, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati repeatedly spoke and wrote against the fallacies inherent in materialistic methods for acquiring and evaluating knowledge, for such epistemic systems subverted the very bedrock of Vedic spiritual culture, namely hearing submissively from the authorities about Adhokshaja, the absolute truth, who is beyond the range of limited conceptual processes. From the onset, he would hack the roots of the supposedly rational and empirical approaches by asserting that mundane sense perception and reasoning are ineffectual for comprehending supra-mundane realism. Thus, it is nonsense to decry transcendence with a measuring stick of one's intellect. Just like we were saying the other day in class, we have conditioned souls have 4 defects, right? Tendency to imperfect senses, tendency to make mistakes, tendency to cheat, and what's the other one?
Illusion.
We fall into illusion, yeah. So that's what's being said here. So he's saying we have these tendencies, so therefore how can we develop philosophies and try to intellectually understand Krishna, the absolute truth, on the basis of our own mental speculation when we have so many imperfections ourselves. That's the point here. He would fight against that.
So how would you break that down? How would you answer that?
Well, we're going on, so hopefully there'll be more information here. Unequivocally stating, quote, whatever the empiricists have given is of no benefit to the world, end quote. Srila Saraswati Thakur denounced both the ubiquitous conviction that the secular scientific method was heralding progress for the human race, and the concomitant pimping of the mundane scientific outlook spawned of the urge to explain phenomena without recourse to God. He cited Nikola Tesla, as an example of an inventor whose discoveries had helped keep the spiritual planets undiscovered. And he deemed that for their pride in bringing civilization to new heights, the so-called intelligentsia was caught up in expanding animalism. Everyone know who Nikola Tesla was? Nikola Tesla was a engineer, especially in electricity. He was a genius. He did a lot of, materially, he did a lot of things. Uh, so he did a lot of things. So he was a very, very smart person. He was a little crazy too, but he did a lot of bad things. But so people like him and people who really glorified and appreciated him for his scientific method and scientific activities, um, but they say, okay, well, now we can explain how everything happens without we don't have to talk about God because we can figure everything out. We can explain how everything happens in the world without mentioning God. See, and it's like that. So that's why the point in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would argue that because we become more and more and more attached and convinced by modern materialistic science, we become more and more attracted and attached to that. And the more we do that, the more animalistic we become, because the farther we get away from God, because God is you cannot understand Him by this mental work, by mental and intellectual work. You cannot figure Him out like that. So if you think that you understand everything about God, or you think about everything about what's happening in the world without mentioning God, then that's actually animalism, because animals have no conception of God. Only human beings have that ability. So anyway, that's essentially what he was preaching against. Anyway, continuing on. Although not enamored by modern science, Srila Saraswati Thakur was not against it per se. By applying the principles of Yukta Vairagya, he employed technological developments for disseminating Krishna Bhakti and for opposing both the atheistic mentality wedded to the ongoing scientific method and also limiting ontology of empiricism, particularly its far-fetched claims to be able to describe reality in toto. He averred, quote, the modern way of thinking increases consciousness of I am the doer, as per Prakriti Priyamanani. It is difficult for a person steeped in this mode of thought to see things as they actually are. Considering themselves learned, they presume to know a lot and understand everything. But because they are acquainted only with the exoteric, they cannot decipher they're acquainted with the exoteric, they're not able to decipher the esoteric principle. Footnote, but I don't see where it is. We'll go on. Like a magnifying glass, which by focusing sunlight on a particular point burns even hotter than the sun. Srila Saraswati Thakur's words beamed the essence of Shastra onto specific misconceptions and reduced them to ashes. Upon encountering the fire of his divine locution, many haughty persons intoxicated with the bravado of worldly knowledge soon exhausted their reserves of contumelies, egotism, perverse judgment, and malice, and thereupon were able to realize the worthlessness of their brittle litanies. All challenges were defeated by his thorough grasp of the principles of understanding Gaudiya philosophy and its application in all situations. Srila Saraswati Thakur specialized in transforming cocky skeptics into resolute admirers by dint of his unparalleled intelligence and uh, polymorphy. None could stand before him. Many became astounded and captivated by his unassailable genius. A typical response was that of some scholars from Dhaka, headed by Professor Ramesha Chandra Chatushtirtha of the Shakti Aushadalaya Chatushpati. Quote, previously we were unaware that there are such amazing Siddhantas in Vaishnava philosophy, or such keenly intelligent acharya among the Vaishnavas. The more we listen to Srila Saraswati Thakur's Hari Katha, the more our thirst for hearing increases. So some people very much appreciated his preaching. Srila Saraswati Thakur was obliged to enlighten various savants that his ministration was not merely a sanitized form of Prakrita Sahaja, vulgarity, but an altogether dissimilar contribution, different. For instance, he once expressed to Rabindranath Tagore the conviction that should Western literati be exposed to even a portion of Sri Chaitanya's message, they would eagerly accept it as a great treasure. Shri Gauranitai, Shri Radha Vajrabihari, Jagannath, Balaram, Lady Subhadra, Witness Shringade, Prahlad Maharaj, Ki Jai. But Tagore was mystified, for he knew that Sri Chaitanya's teachings only according to Prakrita. He knew of Sri Chaitanya's teachings only according to the Prakrita Sahaja's widely distributed misconceptions of Rasika literature. So, Prakrita Sahajas are, they take everything very cheaply. They don't take, they see Krishna and his Rasa Leela as being just a material thing. They don't understand the spiritual side of it, of anything. So this particular person who's now appreciating Bhaktisiddhanta, he was surprised to hear him speak what he was speaking, because the only knowledge, not really knowledge, but the only information that he had about Lord Chaitanya's teachings was through the writings and teachings of these Prakrita Sahajas, who were just materialistic people who took everything very cheap. So now he's actually hearing it directly from an acharya who can give real knowledge. Going on. Ironically, while various Prakrita Sahajas slyly evaded the Gaudiya Math by writing it off as a bunch of jhanis overly inclined to dialectics and thus not at all devotees, certain mundane academics likewise tried to sidestep the Gaudiya Math Pandits by dismissing their predilection for Hari Bhakti as so overwhelmingly inane as to nullify all their apparent learning and render their scholarly constructions unfit for perusal by any self-respecting bookworm. To an elderly scholar who voiced the common claim that Lord Chaitanya never engaged in argument, but simply distributed prema, thus implying that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's contentiousness was unbefitting a Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati retorted that although Mahaprabhu by no means entered into barren dogmatic debates, it was clear from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that he established his position by meaningful Shastriya grapples with the most learned philosophers of the day. Like we're reading with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the Prakashananda Saraswati, Mayavadi leader, like that. So Lord Chaitanya convinced them and others. Srila Saraswati Thakur's no-nonsense approach was effective. Once a man came to him objecting, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may be considered Jagat Guru, but not Bhagavan himself. Srila Saraswati Thakur replied with a barrage of Shastriya references and soon proved him wrong, upon which the man readily surrendered as a disciple. Similarly, many other persons became convinced, or at least subdued, by the genuineness and power of the Lion Guru's arguments. When a dozen university professors eager for dispute visited Sri Gaudiya Math, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told them, "I am prepared to answer whatever questions you ask, provided you listen to me for at least 1 hour without interrupting." The scholars agreed. He then spoke for 1.5 hours, quoting extensively from Shastra and covering the whole ambit of Vaishnava philosophy, proleptically dispelling all the professor's doubts. Without having placed any queries, they departed astonished at the profundity of this unique sadhu's learning. Oh. So he said, you have to listen to me for 1 hour, and then I'll answer all your questions. But by the time he finished speaking, after 1.5 hours, and answering all their questions, they just left. They had nothing more to say. Although himself superlatively scholarly, Srila Saraswati Thakur regarded compromise with mundane scholars to be insidious poison. He never stooped to accommodate them or pander to their anti-devotional theories. For instance, although modern academics date the first Alvars at approximately 700 AD, Sri Vaishnava tradition maintains that the first 3 appeared 4202 BC. And it was this classic information that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur incorporated into his biographies, with no mention of the misinformation spewed by deluded scholars. Commenting on attempts by university scholars to describe Lord Chaitanya and his devotees, Srila Saraswati Thakur stated that by applying conceptions of worldly rasa, proud pedants may acquire PhDs from similarly deluded persons, yet their efforts to comprehend the transcendental by the mundane senses and intellect are like trying to accommodate an elephant on a dish. He warned that bhajan cannot be attained by studying and analyzing according to historicism or allegorical interpretation. One time at Sachi Nandana Math, the district judge of Cuttack, challenged Saraswati Thakur, quote, why not concentrate on uplifting persons in backward areas, such as the hills of Orissa? Rishis and Munis make their ashrams in forests. They live simply and do bhajan. Why are you here in the city with such a nice temple, complete with all comforts and facilities, better even than what the common man can afford? Srila Saraswati Thakur retorted, we are not Bhajananandis. Although traditionally sadhus shun wealthy men and kings, our first duty is to approach the rich and the learned. If we can convince them, then others will automatically follow. Our objective is to benefit all living beings, not just the poor. We must use all modern facilities and technological improvements to influence the educated. The time will come when all of India will follow my message. If we go to the hills of for our own bhajan, or minister primarily to illiterates, the preaching will not be as fructuous. This is also probably a British English here. So, wow. And this is also the mood of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada liked having big temples, if when possible. Big temples allow make the common people would be very attracted to come to. It's like someone may come here and they say, "Wow, marble floor, beautiful deities, it's a nice area that we're in," and they're attracted. And Srila Prabhupada, although his first place he contacted anyone who saw him in America, almost the first place, was sitting under a tree chanting Hare Krishna. And there were those who came. He was singing, not just chanting, but singing Hare Krishna, having his kirtan, and gradually others came. But as soon as some came, and as soon as a place could be established, then he did that. And as soon as he got over the years, when he got a chance to build big temples, like in our Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, like our big temple in Mumbai, still calling it Bombay, but it's Mumbai for the last so many years, and so many other temples that were established then and after. So people will come to those that who wouldn't have otherwise come to hear about Krishna consciousness. They're attracted to the opulence. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was doing like that. He wanted his temples, his mosques as he called them, to be very, very nice. Srila Prabhupada, about our temples, we may or may not have a very, very opulent place. Maybe not every temple is super opulent, but Srila Prabhupada did say about temples, he said, you should make your temples what's the word he used? Well, anyway, he's talking about how they should be so super clean. It's like extraordinarily clean. People would be attracted just because the place is clean, like that. So at least that, and then anyway, this is the principle. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he really utilized this principle of yukta vairagya, which means everything belongs to Krishna. So yukta vairagya means like the proper renunciation or the proper utilization of everything in the Lord's service. He also established before that usually sannyasis in our line didn't wear kurtas, they didn't wear shirts, they just had a cloth. They didn't go in cars because it was just a modern convenience. He didn't use anything. It was just very simple life. But he changed that, saying we dress nicely, people will be attracted. You drive in a car because it's more practical than walking 50 miles away to do some preaching. And here we're describing, he's being described that he said he wanted to preach to everyone, but the people that could most appreciate it and who could actually do something with it were the more wealthy people at the time, and other people who were not smart enough, could not understand the philosophy, and like that. If he had talked to them first, the preaching would have basically stopped there. So he preached to the intellectuals. Srila Prabhupada himself liked the opportunity to preach to professors and learned people, materially learned people, scientists. He preached to them. In fact, he very, very much wanted us to show them the authority of Krishna consciousness movement. And then when Srila Prabhupada would write a book, then he would get certain what they call it. There were certain different statements by different scholars, scientists, and intellectual people there, and that was good. It was very helpful because people in general think these are the the high class people in society, and we'd like to be like them. So if they're approving of Srila Prabhupada's books, then that was very good for preaching. But if a person who can't even write their name was to write something like that, it wouldn't really have any effect. So the idea was to preach that. But this is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's strategic way of preaching. He concentrated with. It's for everyone, but he concentrated on convincing those who are more intelligent, and then through them, then others started taking up Krishna consciousness too. Okay, going on. But the judge, continuing on, but the judge persisted. You should convert the jungle tribes to Hinduism and Vaishnavism. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati responded, our process is not to dictate to others or forcibly convert them, nor to turn Christians into Hindus or vice versa, but to give information about the soul. Jivera Swarup Hai Krishnera Nityadas. Every living being is eternally the servant of the Supreme Lord. End quote. We are concerned with the soul, not sectarian religious dogma. The judge then argued, so if all are equally sons of God, why do you mix primarily with the intellectuals? Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati answered, if we go primarily amongst the ordinary public, others will think this is Chota Lokara Dharma for the less important. That's what it's just saying. Better that we try to convince the leaders, for if they accept it, then others will automatically follow. Yad yad asharati shreshtas tat eva evitaro jana sa yat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever action is great, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. That's from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 21. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was similarly petitioned by Dr. Suniti Kumar Chattopadhyaya, a Calcutta University professor and editor of the Bangiya Sahitya Parishad's magazine, and the Nadia District Magistrate, Mr. T.C. Rai, who together had come to see Sri Gaudiya Math and to meet him. After discussing various topics, they proposed that if Gaudiya Math devotees were to preach less among the elite and more among the struggling lower classes and non-Hindus, that the number of Hindus would increase, which would be highly beneficial for the Hindu society. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied, in Atma Dharma, the intrinsic function of the soul, there is no latitude for such materialistic perspectives as rich or poor, educated or uneducated. The person who is the subject of Atma Dharma is the Atma, the soul. The person who is the subject of Atma Dharma is the Atma, the soul, who is neither rich nor poor, educated nor not uneducated. What transpires in the name of increasing the number of Hindus or non-Hindus only causes mutual rivalry, competition, fighting, envy, sectarian narrow-mindedness, and proliferation of bogus religious cults, and is all speculation that leads human society on the path to destruction. Let all so-called universal welfare activities remain far away, as they are meant simply for welcoming terrible disasters and dangers. Srila Saraswati Thakur often met scholars and addressed meetings in their homes, and being eager to impress Gaudiya teachings upon students, he occasionally lectured in educational institutions. At Ravanchal College in Cuttack, a student challenged, "You are sectarian, not udara, liberal, or generous to all, because you hardly mix with the poor and the downtrodden." End quote. Srila Saraswati Thakur fired back, "Are you udara? Are you generous to all? If so, you should accept us instead of criticizing us." Good point. Okay, so they're criticizing him for not going and preaching to the less, the poor and the uneducated ones in society, saying that you're sectarian, you're restricting yourself. But he fires back at the student. So are you like this? Are you preaching to everyone? Are you equal to everyone? No. Quoting from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's poem Vaishnava K, Kaminir Kama Mehi Tava Dam Tahara Malika Kevala Yadava, lust for women is not meant for you. Krishna alone is the proprietor of all women. One gentleman asked, "What do you mean that women cannot be enjoyed? What do you mean that women can be enjoyed only by Krishna? Can no one else enjoy them?" In reply, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explained the reality that all enjoyment is meant exclusively for Krishna. To another gentleman who protested the forthrightness of the displays and of the preaching at a theistic exhibition, Srila Saraswati Thakur stated that their purpose was not to insult but to edify. That man retorted, "Do you want to convert me?" "Yes," responded Srila Saraswati Thakur. "We require not more than 5 minutes to convert you. You need only give proper attention. when you perceive that my message propounds your own deepest interest and inner necessity, then automatically you will convert. It is because of that that even though I began alone, now 500 men are speaking on my behalf. That's the end of this chapter. Maybe I should. Any questions, comments? Yeah. Try to speak a little, bring the microphone a little closer so others can hear it in the
I
recording.
just have one question. It stated that Bhaktisiddhanta was born on February 6, 1874, and that he died on January 1st, 1937. So why are we instead of celebrating on February 6th, why is that because of the calendar, the Vedic calendar or something that we're celebrating it today? That's my question.
This is the appearance day. So he was born on what day?
The 6th of February.
I don't know, because actually usually in January when we do it. And I think that once every so many years there's an extra month added into the Vedic calendar. And so it throws everything off a month or from how it is the rest of the time. I'm assuming it's because of that. Other than that, I don't know.
And then the other comment was that it's really interesting how we can see how Prabhupada was so dedicated and so dedicated to following his spiritual master. And the same, he didn't change anything. You can see how when we did a life of Bhaktisiddhanta, when we look at it side by side with Srila Prabhupada, we can see the comparison. Different personality, different, different era. What could be said back in Bhaktisiddhanta's time was totally different than when Prabhupada came to America in the 60s. But he still took all those teachings and he preached them according to time, place, and circumstance.
Yes.
And this way he was able to attract those people. I mean, but still, we could see on the parallel point of the intellectuals. Prabhupada would love the opportunity to go to speak. I know this is Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance, but I wanted to comment on the similarities.
Yes.
And we can see how, because of that, because of Prabhupada taking Bhaktisiddhanta's instruction so seriously about, even preaching, printing books, and having temples. Prabhupada was quoted one time when someone said to Srila Prabhupada, "What do you do?" or something like that. And Prabhupada said, "He didn't have any temples." And he was saying, "I'm going to have temples." He was already predicting that he's going to have temples all over the world.
Yeah.
And so, he had this strong conviction in his guru because he was following. And so I just wanted to comment on that. Even to the point where Prabhupada was so flexible in Mukunda's book, Mukunda said, Mukunda Maharaj had Prabhupada called Mukunda up to his room at one point, and he sat him down and he asked Mukunda, "So, who is Krishna?" He asked him, "Who is Krishna?" And Mukunda was kind of like, and then Mukunda explained to him that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, and he explained. And then Prabhupada said, looked at him, was really quiet for him, and he said, and I'm not getting this completely right, there wasn't really a read it, get the right point of this. And Prabhupada told him that he wanted to chant 64 rounds. And Mukunda's like, thinking it would take, he was struggling with 16 rounds, and he's thinking it would take me all day to do this. And then Prabhupada, there was some interreaction, Prabhupada went down to 32 rounds. And still there was some reluctance about his being able to do that. And then Prabhupada finally said 16 rounds, bare minimum. But the reason why I mention that is we can see how Prabhupada was so practical in his preaching. He was going for the highest, position as far as following, down to the point where we could actually accept Krishna consciousness and make spiritual advancement. And again, we can see in Bhaktisiddhanta, he got a lot of this inspiration and this knowledge on how to preach. So similarly, in our situation, if we just follow the steps of Srila Prabhupada and his predecessors, we can also be able to make these kinds of, preaching arrangements to the public in general. So I think that was my point.
Yes, we have to understand the essence of what the acharyas want. There's, there's, there are general principles, and then there are details. The general principles are like Bhaktisiddhanta, the general you preach, and 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 and, and of course he found that preaching to the leaders in society, both the administrative and intellectual leaders, was most effective. But everything can be adjusted according to time, place, and circumstance. Srila Prabhupada also, well, Srila Prabhupada also he came to America to preach. He could have gone all over India and everywhere first. Actually, he did preach in India. The League of Devotees he established in India, but it didn't really go anywhere. And so he took the position, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told him, you preach to the English-speaking people. So he was always thinking, okay, one day I have to go to New York to preach, because New York is a big city, an important city in the United States. So he was always thinking, how can I get to New York to preach Krishna consciousness? And then when he by that preaching that started there, then in due course of time, his English-speaking American disciples, he brought back so many of them to go back and visit India, and then traveled all over the place. They called them they were being known as the dancing white elephants, the American devotees, and then the Indian people started seeing that, wow, we're trying to become materialistic, thinking that's the best thing. The, 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 the British influence was largely to convince the Indian community, the Hindu community, that what you've got is useless. You have to follow us, and there's a lot of influence like that. So they were doing like that, and of course everyone was becoming very miserable too, because of changing that way of that perspective of their life. But Srila Prabhupada went there with his American disciples who already came from a materialistic background, came from a place that India was trying to become like, and here are these American devotees coming back and chanting and dancing and preaching and everything. So that was Srila Prabhupada's very effective way of preaching Krishna consciousness. He showed he couldn't preach in India. They hardly would accept anything he said. But when he brought his Americans who accepted it back to India, then they started seeing the Indian community, Indian population, to a large degree started really appreciating what Srila Prabhupada did, what he brought. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada took that same mentality from his spiritual master, and he came to America on that order of his spiritual master.
Just added to I appreciate the brilliance of something like that. Is responsibility of the growing just the brilliance that is just passed down. I appreciate how that it's effective. It preach to the leaders, it preach to people that are literate, and it's a trickle down effect that's there. So I really appreciate the intelligence, because a lot of people have questions, and we have the answers that nobody else can answer.
Yes.
Outside of that movement, we have here. So I really just appreciate this reading and seeing a little more exactly life of this movement and how we elevate.
Yes. Good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, it's 8:45, so I think we'll finish here for right now. We do have a midday program for Bhaktisiddhanta at 12 o'clock. We have some kirtan for about 15 minutes at 12 o'clock. At 12:15, we'll do a Pushpanjali ceremony for Bhaktisiddhanta. We'll bring probably his picture out and do Pushpanjali. And at 12:30, we'll have Artik here and here, simultaneous Artik. And then at 1 o'clock, then we'll speak or read something more about Bhaktisiddhanta for about a half hour. And then there's some prasadam, Rajbhoga prasadam. Okay? So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai.